Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, a film critic and Hammer fangirl, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV, and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Hello, Kev.
Hi, Becky. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you. I'm very hot.
Yes, it's hotter than hell.
It's warm.
It's warm. I live bang in central London. You couldn't get more central, and honest to God, it's like the gates of hell have opened beneath me. It is horrific here. So there you go. That's terribly British of us, because only a few weeks ago we were moaning, it's all raining and it's cold and it's not very summer, is it? We've had, 3-4 days of hot weather and we're complaining now. I wish it was autumn. I wish it was winter.
Absolutely classic. You can tell that you're listening to a Hammer horror podcast with a couple of Brits, because we're moaning about how hot it is.
Oh, absolutely right.
In this podcast, Kevin and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue. And this week we are finally meeting one of the biggest horror monsters out there as we discuss The Plague of the Zombies from 1966.
But no corpse can remain at peace in this village of the undead, this land of the zombies.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we go into plot details and chat about the endings of the films. So if you would like to watch The Plague of the Zombies before you listen to this episode, it's available on VOD, and it's another one that is part of that lovely sort of Hammer Classics box set. So if you already have that, or you're thinking of investing, this is another one that features. Kev, let's start off by talking a little bit about zombie movies, because we've been doing this podcast for a while now. Hammer have certainly been doing horror for a while now, in 1966. And this is the first time that we're talking about zombies. So are we fans in general of the zombie subgenre? What do you think?
Up to a point. There's too many of them nowadays, and I know that's not a very original observation, but it's true. There are too many zombie films. I think they're too easy to make,
right?
Basically. You get yourself a really good high-definition phone camera, a few of your mates and some, sort of cheap-to-make makeup effects, and you got yourself a zombie film. And it seems like everybody has made a zombie film at some point. And there's just so many. There's some real gems, obviously, this being one of them. This is a terrific film. Night of the Living Dead, great film. Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. Zombie Flesh Eaters, my favourite. Shaun of the Dead, Train to Busan. There's so many great ones, some really, really good ones. But honestly, go onto any streaming platform now. Go and have a look at, Prime Video or something. Type in the word zombie. I'm prepared to be overwhelmed by the amount of junk that's on there, frankly. It's just, honestly, there's enough to mount a zombie invasion on their own, It's just horrific how much really low-quality stuff there is.
But like you say, some absolute gems and films that really kind of, say you're reading a top 100 horror movies of all time list or something. Yeah. There are those key titles that appear time and time again.
Of course.
Because, I guess, as with anything, if it's done well, it really is done well. And there are certain kind of tropes and motifs, I guess, from zombie movies that come up time and time again. And like with any tropes, they can be sort of comforting in some ways.
Sure. Or
they can get a bit repetitive. But often it's nice to see tropes kind of upended, or when the zombie subgenre will kind of suddenly skew off in a different direction and do something very different. Something like Pontypool, for example. So
I was just thinking Pontypool,
right?
Yeah, that's a great example.
And Pontypool was a film that I first discovered through the Evolution of Horror podcast back when Mike was doing his zombie season. I wasn't familiar at all with Pontypool before that. And another film that I wasn't familiar with before that season was Plague of the Zombies from Hammer.
Right.
And coming into us starting Hammer Time, Plague of the Zombies is one of the Hammer films that I'd seen because I watched it when Mike covered it on the pod, on the main pod. And absolutely fell in love with it immediately. I thought, oh my God, like almost one of those kind of where's this film been all my life moments. Absolutely loved it. And so coming into us starting this show, this is one that's again been sort of looming large on the horizon for me because I've been really dying to delve into it with you.
I remember right at the very start we were talking about what we were looking forward to, and this one popped up straight away.
Yeah.
I think this was your number one looking forward to it moments. So hopefully it's still living up to it, hopefully.
Well, spoiler alert, yes, it's still incredible. So
yeah, it is. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed my rewatch. So before we start getting into the weeds of our opinions, let's have a look at the plot of the movie. Sir James Forbes arrives in a remote Cornish village to identify a mysterious plague afflicting the population. He discovers that one of the squires is a disciple of Haitian witchcraft and is using dark magic to resurrect the dead. As the plan to create undead servants, I'd argue slaves, unravels, the squire unleashes his zombie army on the unsuspecting village. So we've already teased it, and I'm more than happy to say that when I still had only seen a handful of Hammer films, Plague of the Zombies was my number one.
Right.
I just thought it was spectacular.
Yeah.
But what about you, Kev? I mean, I know you like it, but what's your kind of history and relationship with this one?
I actually saw clips of it first before I saw the full film. I saw that moment.
Oh yeah.
We'll talk about that moment as we go along because it's the one everybody knows and everybody remembers. And I'd seen that first and I thought, this looks interesting, this looks good. And I had a slightly odd personal history with it. I was going to see Dawn of the Dead. And I was on the Isle of Wight at the time, and my parents owned a newsagent's shop. And on the way out, I went out through the shop itself and said to my dad, off to the cinema, see you later. And he said, what are you going to see? And I said, Zombie Dawn of the Dead, because that's what it was known as over here. And he said, oh, you need to be careful with those zombies. Oh, those zombies, they're the worst of the lot. They're really scary. And I thought, that's not like Dad, Dad was in his national service as a military policeman. He was kind of, nothing scared my dad, I thought nothing more of it, went to the film, came home, and I said to him, look, why do you think zombies were that scary? And he started to tell me about going to the cinema with Mum, presumably one of their first nights out after me and my brother had arrived, and they went to see a zombie film, and it scared the hell out of him. And when I started matching the dates up, I realised what it was. It was Plague of the Zombies.
Oh, wow.
It had so frightened my dad he wouldn't watch zombie films anymore, which I think is the power of that film, because this was this was late 70s, wasn't it, when Dawn of the Dead was out, 78, 79? And still, a decade or so on, my dad was still traumatised by it.
That is amazing. I love that. I love your bit of sort of mathematic detective work.
Well, that's
to figure that out.
That's the nerd gene kicking in even then, He's like, even before I started doing this bloody stupid website of mine, I was, I was still being nerdy and getting the calculator out and trying to work out dates and all the rest of it.
Having to put your sort of pin in, he's referenced something. Let me work backwards and figure this out. Oh, I love that though. I love that you kind of had that, I don't know, that sort of insight really into only Hammer sort of at that point, but into your dad as well, that he's sort of this guy that, especially dads and, if they have been in the military and that sort of thing, you sort of think, these men who won't be scared of anything, and then you think, put a bit of scary makeup on somebody.
That's right,
this is a film that doesn't pull its punches at all. I think in a lot of ways zombie films are pretty scary, and the gore is always ramped up. I know in Night of the Living Dead, I can barely watch the moments where the zombies are kind of biting into all of that, whatever they were eating, chicken cutlets and stuff. And old sort of intestines. And still to this day, that original, and it's in black and white, which it surprises me. I'll be watching that and sort of thinking, oh God, I can barely look.
So I think sort of
gore-wise, zombie films are often a bit more sort of challenging. But what I really love with Plague of the Zombies is that it's got that kind of, that sort of folk horror element to it as well. So it's got that sort of creepiness as well. So it's kind of hitting you with both barrels.
But bags of atmosphere, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
This was 2 years before Night of the Living Dead. So we're kind of at a sort of interesting point of the zombie film here, that we're looking backwards at the sort of, the Haitian voodoo stuff, which we've seen in previous films, but we're also looking forward a little bit to what was coming, because Hammer were allowed to use a bit of blood. There's no intestines flying around in this film, so if you haven't seen it, you are worried about, oh god, it's going to be another zombie gut muncher. It's not. That's not what it's doing. But what it does instead, it has absolutely bags of atmosphere. Really atmospheric film. And it makes the horror comes, I think, from the creepiness of the zombies, the way they look.
Yeah.
They look like they've been dug up. It's one of my issues with Dawn of the Dead is that the budget was a little bit restricted, so a lot of the zombies are just people with a bit of green paint on.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I love zombie flesh eaters is they do look like they've been in the ground for a while.
Oh, I mean, no better example of that, I don't think.
And I think
literal maggots kind of crawling all over their faces.
Well, I think that film is what they wanted to make at Hammer here. I can see a real connection between zombie flesh eaters and this film. I think Lucio Fulci must have been a fan of this film. And I think were Hammer allowed to, by the conventions of the day, they'd have gone for the maggots and the empty eye sockets and all the rest of it. They'd have done that. We're only a couple of years away from seeing that first burst of black and white, but still gore in a zombie film.
Yeah.
I think Hammer were right on the cusp of doing it. It's just that there were certain things you couldn't do in this country at that time. Maggots in the eye sockets is definitely one of them.
Well, it's interesting as well that you say this is a couple of years before Night of the Living Dead, because there's one sequence, and we'll talk about it in a bit more detail later when we get to it properly, but the kind of dream sequence that Peter has, with all of the camera sort of suddenly goes a bit more handheld. There's sort of POV shots.
That's right.
Very, dream sequence kind of framing for that. But the way that they are advancing on him, I thought felt very Romero.
It is, isn't it? They've got that sort of slowness to them and that sort of menace, and the fact that there's more than one.
Yeah.
You don't see many on the screen at the same time, because obviously they were working on a Hammer budget. They couldn't have armies of the dead, But there's enough of them that you get a real sense of just how menacing they are.
For sure.
How threatening they are.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is very different from what had gone before, I think. We'd had sort of these zombie films as far back as the 30s, like White Zombie and Revolt of the Zombies, and there were sort of like Nazi zombies in the 1940s, or sort of thinly disguised Nazi zombies in the 1940s. But they weren't that mouldering dead thing. They were more like sort of enslaved people.
Yeah, absolutely. I walked with a zombie.
That's right, yeah. It's almost as if the zombification had killed them rather than the other way round.
Yeah.
That they died first and then been brought back. This was a bit of a step forward in that. These are very definitely dead people.
Yeah.
In fact, we're shown a dead person right at the start in the coffin, who then comes back as a zombie. So they make it very clear from the very beginning that what we're dealing with here is actual walking dead bodies.
And they're all still dressed in their burial shrouds as well.
That's right, yeah.
Which gives it a sort of what you were saying then about kind of getting a fair few of them on screen at once. There's something about the kind of uniformity of them as well that I find unsettling. One of the nice things about something like Day of the Dead or Shaun of the Dead is later on you get people who have been bitten by a zombie and so are turned into a zombie, but it means that they're kind of wearing their everyday clothes, right?
Yeah.
And so, Shaun of the Dead, you get Tyres, the bicycle courier from space. Yeah. And in Day of the Dead, you've got all sorts, but there's definitely at least there's a woman who's sort of dressed as a majorette and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
what I really found quite uncanny about Plague of the Zombies is that because they've all been buried in these shrouds and then they dig themselves up and, once they've sort of been reanimated, is that, as I say, that uniformity, and they look like almost like one big kind of gestalt entity,
Right.
like they're all the same, and that's really scary.
I think that they're the kind of zombies I like in a way. That they're just this sort of faceless, unstoppable force. We value our uniqueness, our individuality so much that to be confronted by this sort of unstoppable tide of things that look and behave the same way, that's really quite scary. And that's why, sort of zombie has become a synonym for, sort of people who do just follow the crowd.
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
zombie-like, they're faceless zombies who just follow the crowd, so...
that's such a good point.
Yeah, so I like that. I like the fact that in this we can just about recognise who some of these people are, because we've seen them earlier, but there's enough of them decomposed to strip them of some of their personality, and they're just this sort of... They're a slave force is what they are.
Yeah.
They've just been dug up by, we'll talk more about this later, but dug up by this callous aristocrat for basically a slave labour, even more unwilling slave labour than living slaves, which is saying something.
Well, and that's an interesting thing to touch on as well, because if you go back to kind of Haitian voodoo and hoodoo, things like... Serpent and the Rainbow, the Wes Craven film, which was obviously based on the book, The Anthropologist Who Was Over in Haiti. There's a fear there that comes from zombification, because it would often be enslaved people who were zombified, and then they would come back, and so even in death, they couldn't escape slavery, and that is that is much more terrifying than somebody munching on your intestines or whatever.
It's the ultimate cruelty, really, isn't it? To die a slave and then to be brought back as one. It's like, can't you just leave me? Can't you just let me die in peace? At least I'm free from you now. Oh no, I'm not. Here we are. I'm back again as a slave. So it's quite a potent. That you can see why the zombie film became so popular. Because as a metaphor for about 1,000,001 different things, it's kind of unbeatable, really.
It's such a nice canvas, isn't it, to sort of
put
whatever the sort of message or theme or, social zeitgeist or whatever it is at the time that you're wanting to deal with. Night of the Living Dead obviously dealt with kind of racism in the States and the civil rights movement and that kind of thing.
And Vietnam as well, of course. Sort of all these people being killed by hunters, that's quite clearly meant to be a metaphor for what was going on out east.
So what about Hammer? Let's talk a little bit about the production. Was it just time for Hammer to tackle zombies?
I don't know whether it's time for them to tackle it, because like I say, at the time they weren't a big deal. There had been some zombie films in the 60s, but mostly zombies were just kind of, another monster. The time was almost right, and in some ways, if we want to be fanciful about this and big Hammer up big time, we can say they were ahead of the curve.
Well, I would say that.
Well, sort of, but sort of not, because there's no way they knew that Night of the Living Dead was coming. No one knew Night of the Living Dead was coming. I think in 1966, George Romero didn't know Night of the Living Dead was coming. So it was just, there was something in the air. I think, with all the civil unrest that was happening around the world, and wars that were happening around the world, this kind of horror, this kind of monster, its time was coming, and I think Hammer just got in there very early. In fact, they got in really quite early, early as 1962, in fact. Peter Bryan of The Hound of the Baskervilles and Brides of Dracula, he'd written a sort of synopsis, an outline for a film called The Zombie in 1962, and Hammer didn't make it at that point.
Interesting.
They worked on it. Well, Anthony Hines worked on it, sort of polished the script up a little bit and everything, and it wasn't really announced until November 1963, and then disappeared again, got announced again in 1964, and then finally it comes out in 1966. So Hammer weren't sort of jumping at it and thinking, zombie films. They were thinking, okay, we've got this idea, but zombies, do people really want zombies? It's a bit... what can we do with zombies? All they do is shuffle about and don't do very much, because don't forget they weren't eating people at those points. They weren't just shuffling about in their sort of burial gear, not doing very much. So you can kind of imagine them thinking, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to bring the horror out in this situation? So it took them a little while to get it going, and it finally got off the ground when they were doing this. Was part of that deal that we talked about in the last episode about the sort of making the 4 films back to back. So this went out on a double bill with Dracula Prince of Darkness, and it was shot on the same sets and locations as The Reptile, which went out with Rasputin. This will all fall into place over the coming couple of weeks when we talk about those 2 films, and the whole jigsaw will fall into place. Dare I say it, because I got a bit of stick for what I said about Dracula Prince of Darkness, which is odd, because I actually said I liked it, but not everybody heard that bit.
Bit of selective hearing going on, I think.
Selective hearing going on there. I'll say it, and I'll have another rubbish week and this one goes out with people picking on me. Oh, don't pick on me, he's horrible. But I think that the B movies were actually better than the A movies. I enjoy Plague of the Zombies and The Reptile a lot more than I enjoy Dracula Prince of Darkness and Rasputin. And I don't hate Dracula Prince of Darkness, okay? I don't know how many more times I needed to say that, to be honest.
I know.
But I do prefer this film. I think this is a film I would go back and watch again tonight.
Yeah.
Whereas I wouldn't necessarily watch Dracula Prince of Darkness for a little while yet. Did that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
There's something special about this one.
Yeah.
And I can't quite put my finger on why.
That's what I was going to say. I can't.
Yeah.
And I think, like I say, when I watched it the first time, because I really didn't know what to expect, and wasn't particularly well versed in Hammer horror films at the time, I loved it. I loved it. I sort of came away. It was a really pleasant surprise. I thought, wow, that had a lot more going for it than I was maybe expecting or anticipated. Yeah. And I think going into my rewatch, I thought, right, well, now I know, a bit more about Hammer. I'll be able to put my finger on what actually is quite so special about this one. And I've come away actually kind of not knowing. I don't really know what the magic is of this film. We'll talk about lots of lovely details that make it so special, but I couldn't just sort of give you like an elevator pitch about what makes Plague of the Zombies so good. It's just one of those films that, for various reasons, seems to have found the magic and just really kind of, I don't know, they've nailed it for me.
It's whatever freaks my dad out.
There you go.
That's the beauty of it. Whatever it was that freaks my dad out. And it's one of those things where I think about this a lot when people say, oh, why do you like horror films? Why do you like a particular film? Why do you like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Exorcist? And I can't really tell them properly. I can do a little critique of it, a little review of it, but I can't tell you the real details, because if I knew that, with all respect, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Right.
I'd be making horror films. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like if I knew what it was, I'd be making them. I don't know what it is. I'd have bottled it by now. Exactly. Where I think you just look at a film like Plague of the Zombies and you just know. It's one of those films you kind of feel. You can't intellectualise it. You just look at it. You think, oh, this is. There's something here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but there's something here. It's unsettling me, it's scaring me, it's freaking me out, it's making me queasy through the gore, whatever. That's what we find about these films, that we can't always intellectualise what it is we love about them. And perhaps we shouldn't try. Well,
I mean, this is it. Sometimes the magic's just there, and if you don't interrogate it too much, it's actually a good thing.
I think so, yeah.
I think one of the things that does stand out to me after all of our weeks of chatting Hammer films is now and again we'll have one that will sort of say, oh, well, God, the script was a bit sketchy, or the performances didn't quite stand up, but didn't it look beautiful?
Yeah.
Or, oh, well, I thought that the horror was really good in this one, but it looked a little bit cheap. Or, some sort of combination where if something isn't working for us too much, you can kind of put your finger on like, oh, well, this little conceit at the end, like the ending didn't work for me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with Plague of the Zombies, if I go through that list of what makes all of our most beloved Hammer films work. It's got everything.
Yeah.
The performances are great. The script is good. It looks brilliant. It's got some proper horror in it. It's got likeable characters who you root for. The monsters, the makeup looks really good. It's got some interesting kind of standout sequences. It's got a bit of nastiness to it as well.
It has,
in places. Again, this isn't a film that pulls its punches. And it just felt to me like every element of what we talk about when we talk about Hammer films is kind of present for this one, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It's almost, dare we say it, this will throw the cat among the pigeons again, it's almost the perfect Hammer film. Mm-hmm. Because all of the boxes are ticked here.
Yeah.
We've seen some fantastic films so far. The only really bad ones I would have said so far are Maniac and Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, is it? Mm-hmm. I think they're the only two that we've sort of really not liked at all. We've got plenty to come, trust me.
Maybe The Man Who Cheated Death we didn't love.
Oh, yeah, we were a little bit cool on that, weren't we? Yeah. But we've seen some terrific films.
Oh, yeah.
And this one, I think, is right. For me, this is top 5, I think. At least top 5 Hammer. This is just magnificent in every respect. Like you say, everything works.
I think that's it.
Everything just works. Yeah.
Let's dive in to the sort of the plot and the characters. So we get talk about starting strong. We get Andre Morel.
Terrific.
One of my faves. I
love Andre Morel.
So do I. And he's got such a kind of central part in this. I mean, he's the hero of the film.
He is, yeah, definitely.
We've seen him in the past playing, Watson to Peter Cushing's Holmes, for example.
Yeah.
And he's fabulous. I mean, fabulous. But it's very much, as the Watson role always is, he's playing second fiddle, isn't he?
Of course.
Whereas here, he is very much front and centre. He's the hero. And what's quite nice about that is, obviously, compared to some of the sort of younger actors who have maybe been stepping into that more heroic role over the last few films we've chatted about, Andre Morel at this point in his career is a slightly sort of longer in the tooth.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to see him play this doctor. He is Sir James. He's got this kind of, he's a little bit stern at times, but he's got this real kind of gravitas and weight behind him. And so I feel very secure in Sir James's hands as he's sort of negotiating his way through the sort of mystery and then, starting to sort of confront it head on.
I think one of the nice things about the script is that they do give Sir James a bit of a character.
Yeah, they do.
Quite a lot of character, in fact. I love the relationship he has with his daughter, Sylvia.
Me too.
He's very much a sort of Victorian father, you keep an eye on this young lady to make sure she doesn't... But he's quite playful as well.
It is.
There's a lovely scene at the beginning when he's messing about with his fishing equipment. We first see him, he's got the fishing rod indoors and he's looking at the flies, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. And she comes in and she's sort of like desperate to go to Cornwall to see her friend and everything. And he's like, I just want to get on with this, I want to do that. And he indulges her.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of sort of playfulness, his little playful backwards and forwards between the two of them, which sets them up immediately and very economically.
Yeah.
And you do sort of watch it, you do think, what a lovely, lovely pair of people. I don't think his wife, her mum, is ever mentioned.
No.
In some ways, this is going to sound horrible, we don't need her.
No.
Because they're such a good little team themselves that I think they make the film. I think that relationship is the heart and soul of the film, and I think they are so good. And that's all down to the writing. That's just giving Andre Morel something to work with. And, because he was such a terrific actor, he could take that and put his own little flourishes in there. and you believe him, you buy him as this concerned father.
And I love what you say there, Kev, about it being quite playful, because she's very sweet and sort of won't take any of his sort of grumpiness.
Yeah.
So this is Sylvia, played by Diane Clare. And at one point when she's sort of saying, because she's got this letter, right? They know this doctor called Peter, who I think was one of Sir James's sort of pupils, his students.
That's right.
And, and then there is Sylvia's friend Alice, who has married Peter. So there's this sort of foursome, and Sir James and Sylvia they receive this letter, and Peter has been sort of stationed, for want of a better word, down in this little Cornish village, and there's this weird malady going on that I think his sort of experience and the fact that there's some local superstition and they won't let him do any autopsies.
That's right, yeah.
He's struggling to figure out what's going on, and so he writes to his old mentor and is looking for advice. Now, Sylvia jumps on this because, as you say, she wants to go down and see her friend Alice. And Sir James is like, go to Cornwall, it's miles away. And he's, as you say, he obviously just wants to get on with his sort of little retirement hobbies. And
yes, that's right.
As she manages to kind of gently persuade him that actually it would be a nice thing to do, so they should go down, he says, I don't know why I put up with you at all. I should have drowned you at birth. Yeah. And she sort of just laughs and sort of says, okay, Father, well, I'll go and pack, shall I?
Yeah, like she's heard all this before.
Exactly.
This is the way they just talk to each other.
Yeah.
To an outsider, it might seem, my God, he wanted to drown his baby daughter. That's just the way. That's the way families work, isn't it? We all take the piss out of each other.
It's
a bit
great.
of banter, and they capture that beautifully. I just love the relationship that they have.
Me too.
And I love other things about his character as well, which I assume came from the script. That was, he'd played Watson, as he said, in Hound of the Baskervilles. But he steps up now into the Sherlock Holmes role.
Yeah.
He's now doing the Victorian rationalist, and all of his certainties are slowly challenged by the fact that voodoo really does exist. It's like, how can this exist? But it does. He gets a lovely quote, doesn't he? I find all kinds of witchcraft slightly nauseating, and this I find absolutely disgusting. Mm-hmm. So he's still got that morality, but he's beginning to sort of understand that there's more going on in the universe than his Victorian rationalism would have allowed him to accept prior to arriving in this village.
Exactly that.
Lovely little bit of characterisation, that, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic.
I love the bit actually when he speaks to the local religious man, the priest or vicar.
The vicar, yeah.
And he asks him if he can have a look at whether he's basically got any volumes on sort of witchcraft. And that for me was very evocative of stuff that comes later, horror films that come later, when there is there's almost like a procedural element to it.
That's right, yeah.
But also, as you say, this idea of somebody who has got very sort of strong, grounded, unshakable ideas about the way the world works. And then he's having to kind of go into, delve into these sorts of more esoteric matters, maybe against his better judgment, but as it's sort of it's slowly occurring to him that there's more going on here than, as you say, my sort of Victorian sensibilities would have perhaps allowed.
But because he's a scientist, first and foremost, that's what scientists do. They like to be challenged.
Yeah.
They like to have their certainties questioned so that they can go and push a little bit further. So he dives into it straight away. He's very like a Van Helsing character in that respect. And in fact, some people have noted, and I think they have quite a good point, that the plot of this film maybe models slightly on Dracula.
Okay.
Hamilton, the evil squire, the evil lord who's bringing back the zombies, he's obviously Dracula.
Yep.
So James is Van Helsing, Sylvia is Lucy.
Yeah.
Alice is Mina. There's a lot of emphasis on blood throughout. They need the blood to bring the zombies back from the dead. bringing them back to a sort of life. So I can see where they're coming from, that there's quite a lot of Dracula in this. And I think Andre Morelli's playing Van Helsing to a certain degree.
That's such a good observation. Yeah.
It's not bad, is it? I hadn't thought of it until several people I know started mentioning it. And I thought, yeah, you've got a good point there.
I mean, I would almost, and again, you know, I know that we would never say that anybody would do it better than Peter Cushing. But if Peter Cushing wasn't in existence, I could see Andre Morel playing Van Helsing and doing a really good job at it.
I mean, why do you think I love Cash on Demand so much? We got Andre Morel versus Peter Cushing.
Ugh.
And he's like two of my favourite actors of all time ever, squaring up against each other and bringing their A-plus games because they know how good the other man is.
Yeah.
So I've got to be really on top form here and giving absolutely extraordinary performances throughout. So, yeah, I love it when actors rise to those kind of occasions.
Yeah.
And Andre Morel. And what I love about Andre Morel as well, he was a very serious actor in a lot of ways, but he never gave the impression that making horror films for Hammer was a bit beneath him. He made quite a lot of films for Hammer, and he always gave 101%. He always gives the most convincing performances in all of his work. There's sometimes, even dear old Christopher Lee, you know, we hear stories about him sort of like, oh yes, I just did it as a favour to Hammer and all the rest of it. It's like Andre Morel, you know, you kind of get the impression he thought, okay, it's a bit silly, dead people getting up, walking about, but we've got to entertain the troops. We've got to do the thing here. We've got to do the magic. And I'm going to do it. And you could tell the rest of the cast, the younger cast members, they light up when he's on screen.
Yeah.
They start to perk up a little bit, you know, because they're in the presence of a master, to be honest. And I could wax lyrical about Andre Morel from now till doomsday, to be perfectly honest, because he's right up there with one of my favourites. I adore. He never did a bad job for Hammer. Even if some of the films he was in weren't great, he was always great. One of the best things about those films. Yeah.
And actually, you know, you're saying that, and what I really like is that so many of the other players in this cast are absolutely meeting him. You know, they are perhaps doing that thing that we talked about with a film like The Nanny, with having, you know, Betty Davis on set. Everybody suddenly thinks, you know, right, well, better bring my A game.
That's right.
There are a couple of slightly weaker cogs in the machinery, but I think you know, we've already talked about Diane Clare as Sylvia and their lovely chemistry, and their lovely relationship, and she just doesn't appear to be intimidated by it in any way whatsoever. You know, I really like Sylvia as a character,
and she's not intimidated by anybody, even sort of, you know, the Squire Hamilton, who's the monster. She's quite fiery, isn't she, when she's confronting Hamilton? She's not taking any of his nonsense anymore, thank you very much.
No.
You know, she's quite a modern woman in a kind of, she's a very sort of 60s woman in a sort of Victorian set film, I think. You know, the Hammer are starting to, I think, rise to the it's not the challenge, what's the word I'm looking for? Rise to the, whatever it is, of women's liberation, which is starting to take hold now in the mid-1960s, and Hammer are taking note of that. And they're giving their character, okay, later on we're going to get the sort of, you know, the low-cut décolletage, some of which were virtually round their knees, to be perfectly honest, but, you know, didn't leave much to the imagination. But here I think she's quite a fiery, independent character. She's quite tough, and I like that about her. She's really good.
She is. She's great. There's that horrible sequence when not for the first time in Hammer sort of gothics are we seeing some nasty men who, you know, they're nasty because they're fox hunters. I love this because I'm very much against fox hunting. Thank you very much.
Quite and right.
I love to see that Hammer obviously were as well, because they keep coming for these fox hunters.
They do, don't they? They become a kind of recurring human monster.
Yeah, exactly. But there's this horrible, horrible sequence in the film where they essentially kidnap Sylvia. Yeah. They ride up to her on their horses. They harass her. She sort of, you know, they push her over into the mud and then scoop her up onto the back of the horse and basically kidnap her back up to Squire Clive Hamilton's mansion. And then I mean, Kev, it's horrendous. They essentially... It looks like they're about to gang rape her.
Yes, he does. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. They humiliate her. And then it looks like that's where we're going next.
It absolutely looks like that. I mean, there is even a line. They're almost drawing straws.
They are, yes.
You know, like who gets to go first? Like, just the most...
Isn't it a pack of cards? They're sort of drawing a pack of cards.
Right. That's right. They're drawing cards.
Yeah, to see who gets to have her first. And it's, you know, but the thing is, and I you know, those kind of scenes are always uncomfortable. They're always unpleasant. But I think Hammer were quite smart, because what they're doing here, that from a male perspective, I could be misreading this because I'm seeing it from a male perspective, but it doesn't strike me as a salacious scene, because I don't feel that I'm being invited to side with these repulsive men.
Absolutely not for a moment.
I'm on Sylvia's side. We're meant to be on Sylvia's side. And that's where sometimes, you know, so particularly like the rape revenge films can go a little bit awry when we're maybe meant to feel a bit sorry for the men, what happened to them. It's like, well, no, look what they did. They're awful people. With this, we never, right from this moment right the way through to the very end of the film, we never once have a moment's care for these men.
No.
We loathe them.
Yeah. Hammer are very staunch and obvious in what they think of these men and what we're supposed to think of these men. And
exactly
what you were describing just now about Sylvia's, you know, her sort of strength and her take no nonsense. You know, she is terrified when she is under threat, as she should be, because this is a horrific thing that is happening. But she pulls herself together once Hamilton has sort of seen them off and said, you know, I'm disgusted with a lot of you. And then he is sort of saying to her, like, you know, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me get you home and stuff. And she's like, absolutely not. Like, leave me alone.
Exactly.
I want nothing to do with you people. And there is a peak of anger in her response that I loved, actually. She isn't... She doesn't allow this horrendous thing that has happened to, I don't know, sort of dampen her fire. She's
no.
I don't want anything from you. Thank you very much.
An apology is not going to cut it.
Exactly.
She's taking no nonsense, but she's taking names.
Yes.
And she's gonna get her own back on these arseholes one way or the other. You know, she's a little toughie, Sylvia. And I love her. I think she's great. You know, it's probably Diane Clare's best film for me. She did a string of horror films around this time. The Vulture is awful. The Hand of Night is quite interesting, actually, although it's a little bit dull at times. But it is actually quite an interesting film. But this, by far and away, is the best thing she did. And I think that's because her part is better written here than it was in any of the other films.
So we've got John Carlson as the evil Squire Clive Hamilton. Oh, he's such a bastard.
What a scumbag.
Honestly.
I think it's Denham Elliott says that, doesn't he? In is it Trading Places, where he's like, you know, what a scumbag or something like that, doesn't he? Like, yeah, and I just love that line. But he's an absolute slime ball from beginning to end.
This is another Hammer film that is very much framing the kind of aristocracy as the baddies. A little bit Eat the Rich. And he is... there's a bit quite early on when Peter, played by Brooke Williams, is describing Squire Clive Hamilton, and he says something like, because he really doesn't like him, he says something like, you know, he's judge, jury, magistrate, sort of, you know, landowner. Like, he basically just kind of I don't know, like he looms over this little village from his great big house up on the hill, with all of this power. And I think Peter is very much of the opinion that he is abusing that power, and he's very suspicious of him. But sort of outwardly, he's this very sort of upstanding aristocrat. But what we learn is that he has done a lot of travelling around the world, and he has been in Haiti and he's picked up these kind of voodoo practices. He's been practicing black magic. And as you said earlier, Kev, he's literally doing that to zombify the local villagers and turn them into slaves to essentially like work in the... Is it a tin mine?
It's a tin mine.
In the tin mine.
Right. Yeah.
This old mine that, from the outside is supposed to be sort of unused, it's fallen out of use. And yet actually underneath it's fully working, but kind of worked by this army of zombie slaves that he is creating to essentially, make him more money.
Yeah.
The other thing, and we've talked about the sort of older sort of Haitian voodoo approach to zombification, that where the sort of genesis of where that comes from. But there are black slaves in this film who are essentially just drummers, right? He is he's doing all of the rituals. He dons a mask. He's got this very ornate ring that you assume some of the power comes from. He's got a huge altar and all of these sort of bits and bobs, sort of ritualistic items that he is using for his rituals. And whenever you see him doing this, there are 3 or 4 drummers who it very much seems that he has brought either from Haiti or another part of the world.
Yeah.
They have no other job from what we see than just drumming for these rituals, and you never see them outside of this mine where he's basically got all of the zombies, and his black slaves are all down there. And I just couldn't help thinking, like, where are they? Like, I know later it's revealed that they're under, but I'm like, does he just keep these men down here just drumming constantly? It is just every element of his being, whether it is the way that he enslaves the people from the village, whether he has this kind of aristocratic entitlement, whether it's the way that he has enslaved these people that he has kind of brought in from other parts of the world to literally just drum out his rituals. Every aspect of him is just loathsome.
Oh, it is. Yeah. He is we've seen some appalling aristocrats in Hammer up to now, as you mentioned earlier, but this man... this man is not only an entitled arsehole, he's a capitalist running dog. Yeah. He's out to make money by exploiting the working classes in this case. It's notable, I think, that you were talking about these black guys that he keeps sort of underground the whole time. Yeah. There is one he allows overground to be his servant. His
butler, essentially, yes.
Yeah, which is perhaps all that they can aspire to, these poor guys that are chained up presumably chained up at some point. They're not doing it all night, I wouldn't have thought. But they're certainly trapped down there in those mines. The best they can aspire to is to be a servant.
Yeah.
Because that's how little he thinks of them.
And also, I get no impression that, he's actually giving this man a living wage. He's probably just put him in a slightly nicer outfit,
Yeah. But he probably goes back down the mine at night. So that's probably where he's living, I would imagine.
Right.
He hasn't got a room in the house necessarily. He's just, he's just treated as badly as the others. Just like you say, he's got better threads, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's, that's not a good thing in any way, shape or form. But I don't think he's necessarily a racist in the sense that he only picks on non-white people, because he's bloody horrible to white people as well.
Absolutely.
He's horrible to every single person he meets in this.
Yeah, he's an equal opportunities arsehole, this bloke.
He is, an equal opportunity bigot. Yeah, he just hates everyone.
Yeah.
But also, you were saying about, he's perched there on his house looking down on the village and all the rest of it. He's got his ring. All of these are very Dracula-like motifs as well, aren't they? Dracula up in his castle. Dracula has quite an ornate ring as well.
Yeah.
So, again, he's sort of highlighting this thing. And he has these powers over people. It's almost like hypnotism when he brings them back.
He's able to sort of draw people to him, isn't he? Again, as we've spoken about with Dracula.
Well, there's a very nice line that you were saying about how Peter, he sees straight through him. Peter immediately doesn't like him. But Alice, on the other hand, she's very wary of him, but she does say he's such a charming man.
Yeah.
And you can see why that kind of person wields the kind of power that they do. We've seen it in the real world in recent years, that when you've got these charismatic sort of aristocrats and semi-aristocrats, they will attempt to get away with murder because they can, because they have that superficial charm. We're beginning to see through them, thankfully, after all these bloody decades of subservience. We are beginning to see through these people now.
Yeah.
But you can see why Alice, you know, sort of like, you know, yeah, there's something not right about him, but he's such a charming man.
Yeah.
You know, and he's kind of creepy. That's such a creepy line in itself, isn't it? The fact that he's sort of fooled this poor woman into believing that actually he's all right. He's not. He's bloody monstrous.
At that point,
Awful
do you
man.
think she's already under his thrall? Because what he does is to... he's got these little coffins, little teeny weeny coffins, with voodoo dolls in.
Yes.
And very much what I think in Western culture... We understand what a voodoo doll is to be, you know.
Yeah.
So these little sort of clay figures, and he has them in all their little individual coffins. And what he does is he will, if he wants to enslave somebody and get them under his thrall and make them into a zombie, he finds some way to get their blood. And what his main kind of MO seems to be is he'll get them to sort of cut themselves in sort of an accidental way. So he might break a glass or, you know, she'll, I can't remember how Alice says that she actually got her cut.
Because she's cut before we meet her, isn't she? She's got the bandage on her arm. She's cut herself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's very jumpy about it.
That's right.
She sort of doesn't want to really say how she's gotten it. And then he'll find some way to kind of get the blood from this injury, and then what he does is he takes it home in this creepy little bottle and pours it onto the little doll, and that is, you know, how he does the ritual, and then he kind of gets them under his thrall. But I think at that point that we first meet her, he's kind of already done the spell on her, and poor Alice, you know. So we get Alice and Peter. Peter, as I've already said, is played by Brooke Williams. Alice is played by Jacqueline Pearce. And they're this young married couple. He's got this sort of practice in this little village. And when Sir James and Sylvia arrive off the back of Peter's letter... You get the impression that they just did not think that they were going to come, because Alice is mortified. She's the house is in disarray. She's not sort of staying on top of, you know, what the sort of woman's work in quotes
yes.
Of sort of, you know, doing the housekeeping and things. She's very concerned about her appearance. She keeps sort of saying like, oh, I look such a mess, you know, apologizing to them. And there's something here about kind of the affliction that's going on in the wider village and Peter's inability to kind of get to the bottom of it. And so actually the first time we meet him, he's just basically getting drunk in the inn, isn't he? Because I think he's at the end of his rope.
Indeed.
And poor Alice, who is not only probably just in a pretty depressing situation, but already seems to have kind of fallen victim to it. Yeah,
very, very possible. I think you're right, actually. I think right from the start, she's too far gone, perhaps, by the start. You know, she's certainly in denial about what's happening. I think she doesn't want to accept to herself that she's succumbing. And then it's thrown into sharp relief for her, isn't it? Because I mean, this is a common thing where there's sort of something awful going on in one's life, and it's like it's hard, but you're just about managing to sort of hold stuff together, and you know, and then somebody from the outside comes in and sort of says, "Are you okay?" and you just break. That's right. And that seems to be what happens with Alice. Is she's been just about surviving, and then these people from her past, and you know, one of her very close friends, Sylvia, sort of almost she sees herself from the outside almost. That's the key, isn't it? That these are not just people from her past; they're outsiders. Yeah. Because the whole of the village is kind of clammed up. They won't talk about it. They are in total denial, and she's got no one to talk to about what's happening. until Sylvia arrives.
Yeah.
Even Peter, because Peter is so sort of broken by his experiences, by his inability to protect the people that he's sworn to protect. He's a doctor. He feels, I think, a sense of duty to these people. Yeah. And they just keep thwarting him at every turn.
Well, and also they're furious at him, aren't they?
They are,
why come on, doctor, you with all your books, so why haven't you sort of managed to figure this out yet? And he's sort of pleading with them. Well, how am I supposed to find out if, you won't let me sort of do a post-mortem?
Exactly. So he's on a hiding to nothing, poor Peter. I do feel for him. And poor Alice is even worse still, because Peter is so self-absorbed at this point, understandably so, I think, because the anger and frustration that he's feeling about not being able to do his job, that she hasn't got anybody else to talk to. And then when Sylvia turns up, at last another young woman to talk to, but it's too late. It's so tragic.
And also I wonder if part of Alice's sort of, I don't know, the way that she views Hamilton, the squire. You know how after you've had the sort of the horrible scene up at the house, and he's offered all of this sort of apology and help to Sylvia, and she says, "Fuck off, mate."
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
He comes to the house to see her, and he's sort of checking up, Now, obviously, what happens is that he drops a glass, she cuts her finger, he gets her blood, etc., etc. But what he's doing before that is kind of lending this sort of sympathetic ear. And although we never see this on screen, I wonder if he's done the similar thing to Alice in the past.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So he's come to the house. He said, oh, I'm so sorry about how everything must be so difficult for you and your husband in the village. How dreadful. Let me sort of convey my sympathies. And you wonder if maybe he's the first person that's actually sort of, although, obviously it's his motivations aren't entirely altruistic.
Yeah.
Whether he is the first person who sort of said, like, well, let's, unload yourself on me, my dear. Do you know what I mean?
Isn't that the way men like that work?
Yeah.
That they will sort of wheedle their way into a woman's affections while they've got the most appalling ulterior motives. We know that happens in the real world. We've all seen people doing that, unfortunately. But, so there's some quite complex character relationships going on in this film, aren't there?
I like it.
Very much so.
So what about Peter and Alice? Peter strikes me. I agree. I sympathise. He's a bit of a wet blanket, though, isn't he?
Oh, he is. I think poor old Brooke Williams. I think the party's a little bit underwritten here, to be honest. I think Peter Bryan...
He's definitely the least interesting thing about this film.
Yeah. Peter Bryan and Anthony Hines had obviously got a bit bored with it all when they were coming to writing his parts. But then when you got other characters like, Hamilton and Sir James and Sylvia, you're going to focus on them. He's just the juvenile lead, basically. He's the young man who's going to do all the dashing about because, Andre Morel was not an old man by any means, but he was playing an older man. So he wasn't going to do the rushing. He's the doctor's assistant. There you go, crowbar time. I've managed to get Doctor Who into it. He's the doctor's assistant, isn't he? He's the one that's doing all the heavy lifting and running about for the older guy. And I think Brooke Williams does a good enough job. But the character is a bit, a wet blanket is a best way to describe him. He's a bit of a non-entity, isn't he, really?
We don't get a lot of time with Alice because she meets an unfortunate end. But I thought that Jacqueline Pearce was very good. She's those moments when Sir James and Sylvia first arrive, and she is kind of... at first she sort of doesn't know who they are. She almost doesn't recognise them. And when she is sort of having to play this role of the sort of slightly embarrassed housekeeper, not housekeeper as in like...
Sure.
You know what I mean, like the person who is meant to be looking after the house. Homemaker. Thank you, homemaker. Yeah. I thought she was great. Again, doesn't have a huge amount to do. Don't get a huge amount of time with her, but whenever she was on screen, I was impressed. I thought Jacqueline Pearce was really lovely. I love Jacqueline Pearce. We're going to see her again in The Reptile. She's very good in that. But of course, so many of us remember her for one thing only, and I will just say the words maximum power.
And every Blake Seven fan in the country has just burst out laughing because she was, of course, Servalan in Blake Seven, which is where I really know her from. She was magnificent in that.
Amazing. I've never seen Blake Seven, but my mum was a huge fan. But I never.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
she is amazing. She's this sort of femme fatale galactic leader who's like the most ruthless character you've ever seen on British television.
Oh my God, incredible.
She would scare Davros, frankly. She was really ruthless, and sort of maximum power was one of her catchphrases, and she was terrific in that. And I've always been a big fan of Jacqueline Pearce. I did meet her once at a signing, and I've said this so many times about the people I've met, but she was exactly who I wanted her to be.
Oh, I love it.
She was so charming, she was so lovely, and she fielded all the stupid questions that we were asking about Blake Seven and Hammer films, even though every single person in that queue had asked her the same question. She still made us sound like we were the first person that ever asked. So can't speak highly enough of her, bless her. She was amazing. So
classy.
Yeah, big fan. Very classy, that's the word.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Go watch Blake Seven. Terrific stuff.
Maybe I will. Maybe I will. I'll get the fan on me and a huge pint of ice water and stick some Blake Seven, and that'll be a lovely afternoon.
It will.
Right, well, so Sir James comes down and he starts investigating, and luckily, Kev, there is some local law enforcement.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I know where you're going.
Lend a hand.
Yeah.
Everybody get your bingo cards out, because it's Michael Ripper watch time.
Sorry, Michael who? Never heard of him. Who's he? Have we seen him before? Michael Ripper. I mean, come on. If this film isn't in your top 20 Hammer films, there's something wrong with you, because Michael Ripper's in it, all right? And
exactly, this is what I'm saying. It ticks all the boxes.
It ticks all the boxes. Yeah, he played Sergeant Jack Swift. What an excellent name.
Incredible name.
A great name.
And what I love about this is it's not just another Michael Ripper in a fake nose as a sort of comedy coachman. Sergeant Jack Smith is a proper character in this film. So we get some really nice Michael Ripper moments. There's one bit that I was almost like, hello, Michael Ripper, you're actually looking a bit dashing, because rather than just being in his sort of plod, uniform the whole time, there's one bit where he is sort of doing a bit of an interrogation in the little police station, and he's down to his shirt sleeves and he's being a bit of a hard man. I loved it.
He's kind of like Regan from the Sweeney, but like a decade earlier, isn't he? And sort of like Victoria version of that. He's the bad cop. He's the one that's leaning on people and sort of, but at the same time, very personable as a character in that way that only Michael Ripper could be. He had such a winning way of doing working class characters. Proper salt of the earth, just working class, ordinary guys going about their job, doing their everyday business. And he's great here, especially when he's playing this down-to-earth copper who's not at all equipped to deal with what's going on around him.
No, I think you get the impression that he's quite grateful to have Sir James sort of turn up and look into it.
Because he defers to him very quickly, doesn't he? He's obviously a very proud copper. He's in charge of the village. And then when Sir James turns up, he's like, oh, yes, Sir James, whatever you need, Sir James. I'm going to doff in his cap sort of thing. He's like, thank God there's somebody here that might actually be able to help us out here, because I can't do this.
You get that a lot in these films, and I can only assume it's, referencing what the kind of class hierarchy was like at the time.
Yeah.
As soon as a doctor... and there's certainly a sir comes onto the scene, because they do it with Dr. Frankenstein all the time.
They do, they do.
It's very quickly, deferring. That, in fact, in that scene, in the police, in the sort of police interrogation in the police station, it's the brother, so the guy that we see right at the beginning in his coffin, so the coffin kind of falls down, it's knocked over by the bastard fox hunters.
That's right,
during the funeral procession, and it falls and it cracks open, and we see the dead body in the coffin
with this horrible contorted face, which makes you think, what did he go through? What caused him to die like that?
It's such a moment of horror relatively early in the film. And but we've got the Martinus brothers. So we've got Tom Martinus and John Martinus. Kev, which one is which? Which one's the dead one and which one's the angry brother?
John is the dead one, played by Ben Harris, and Tom is the living one, the angry one,
Marcus Hammond,
played by Marcus Hammond.
And he says, when Sir James comes into that sort of interrogation, he says, well, come on, he thinks that I didn't do it. To the sergeant, he says, well, the doctor thinks that I didn't do it, so let me go. So he absolutely, sort of outranks even the police in this little village as soon as he arrives. And there's this fabulous moment when they first meet, because Sir James says to Peter at one point, right, look, we've got to go and dig one of these bodies up because we must do an autopsy to figure out what's going on. And so they go down to dig a grave. It's this beautiful comedy Hammer moment when it's sort of camera down into these two blokes in this open grave, and Sir James looks up over his shoulders, and the two cops are just stood at the edge of the grave looking down at them, looking very stern. He says, you just step up here a moment, gentlemen, please. Yeah. And then he sort of, Sir James suggests, it's not too... And he says, well then, I suppose you don't mind if we have a quick look? And he wrenches open the thing. It's so drama. I absolutely loved it. Opens the coffin and obviously it's empty.
It's hilarious, isn't it?
And there's this really nice moment when... Michael Reaper's sergeant suddenly looks really obviously shocked, and he says his son was one of the first to die of this sort of plague, and so he agrees to keep his report back from the squire for a couple of days or something while Sir James and Peter have a chance to sort of look into things. And it's really nice. It could have just been so easily another copper who's sort of making life difficult like the rest of the villagers are, but you get even this lovely little character sort of insight that actually, he's lost his son to this, and so he sort of says, fair enough, I'll keep it under my hat for a little while you sort of look into it.
Again, a lot more rounded than you might expect with these characters. So again, the power of the script, that they're actually properly formed characters. Maybe that's why we love it as much as we do.
Yeah, because it has that depth and that richness.
It does.
And these are the moments that, when we were saying earlier, you can't necessarily kind of put your finger on exactly what makes it so good, but actually it is these rounded characters that just sort of give it this depth and this just sort of extra bit of interest.
That's
it's not just archetypes, it's characters. I like it.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely right. Nice bit of writing, so big thumbs up for the writing. And of course we should point out that the coffin that they're digging up is that of John Martinus.
Right, it's that one.
So when we find the coffin is empty, that's quite ominous, and boy, is that going to pay off in one of the film's best moments, which I'll talk about at the end.
Oh, at the end?
Oh, yes. Bit of drama. Oh
my God, it's so good.
It is so good, isn't it? It's absolutely brilliant. One of Hammer's best scares. There you go. Best trailer you'll get 100%. Out of me. There you go.
Yeah, love it. Little teaser. We've talked a bit about, this sort of the men in the inn being very angry at Peter because he can't sort of get to the bottom of what's going on and killing all of these people. We've spoken a bit about Sylvia and Sir James being these outsiders that are coming in to investigate. We've talked about some of the kind of more superstition elements about, not wanting their loved ones to sort of undergo autopsies and things. How do you think, for you, Kev, the sort of folk horror elements play up against the more kind of zombie stuff? Because this is sort of a meeting of two subgenres in a way. How does the balance work for you?
And it's a meeting of two subgenres which hadn't really properly been formed yet, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So the folk horror thing really, I mean, the phrase wouldn't become... not even in wide use, but I found it in 1971, 72 edition of one of the film trade magazines talking about Blood on Satan's Claw, which they describe as a folk horror film. So that was one of the earliest examples in terms of film. There are a few others prior to that, but one of the first ones. So it hadn't even been sort of thought of as an active genre at this point, which is interesting. No. And Hammer do a couple of them, which I think have since been sort of consumed by this ever-growing sort of like this completely out of control sort of like a canon of folk horror. Basically, if he's got a tree in it and he's slightly scary, folk horror, and he goes in. So it's like, and I exaggerate for comic effect, but there are elements of it here. Certainly, you got those cult-like rituals and the masks that they wear.
Yeah,
which is and it's like a satanic cult that he's running.
Yeah.
He's like a satanic cult of one, basically, because the rest of them are slaves or zombies. But still, it's kind of, it's there, isn't it? That sort of feeling of this sort of like small town where a cult has taken over and he's kind of running everything. And Hamilton's interest in sacrificing Sylvia in one of his rituals, it's never satisfactorily explained. Did he want her to join the ranks of the dead workers? Does he want to go through the rigmarole when he created other zombies? Is this what he has to do every time? But I kind of like the fact that there's a hint that there's something else going on there that we haven't been made privy to. I kind of like that. In most other films, I would see that as a failing. As a kind of like, oh yeah, they didn't bother to explain that to us.
Yeah, they sort of left it too open-ended or something.
Exactly. But here I kind of like it because we never really get to grips with what Squire Hamilton is really up to. We know he's a horrible venal business type who just wants to exploit the workers. We get that. That's very clear. But what's his interest in Alice and then Sylvia?
Right. This is what I was about to say in response to that, Kev.
Yeah.
Is because it's Alice first, isn't it?
That's
and you
right,
wonder, because you're not telling me, I mean, it can't be that he's running out of blokes to
no.
zombify for the mines yet, and you can't imagine that these lovely diminutive women are going to be too handy down there.
Exactly. You know that if they came back, they'd be making zombie cups of tea for the workforce.
Exactly.
You know that's
right?
how that would work, right?
Exactly. Doing his laundry.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you do wonder that, because obviously he's got designs on Alice. What for? We're never entirely sure.
Find out.
But could it be as a sort of female companion, sort of under his thrall, who can't or doesn't want to get away because he's got complete control over her. And then it's if you sort of drill down into that, you think, well, did he only have his sights set on Sylvia because Alice dies before really she's sort of able to take up her sort of zombie mantle, or is he such a git that he's just too fickle, and so Sylvia turns up and he thinks, actually, I like her more, so we'll throw Alice to one side and I'll have her instead.
Could be, or even worse, he could just be thinking, I'm a bloke, I'll have a harem.
Have a harem, yeah, good point.
I'll have an undead harem, I'll have them both. Yeah. Because they're only women, aren't they? They're only women. So, they I'm the squire, they're my property, so I shall do with them as I please.
Yeah.
So, it's like, the more you find out about this Squire Hamilton chap, the more you dislike him. He's kind of a horrible guy, isn't he? And he is sort of horribly possessive about these women. Let's
talk a bit about, the zombies. And it sort of leads us quite nicely on to the fact that we lose Alice. There's this incredible sequence where we essentially see her kind of zombify in front of our eyes, don't we?
Yeah.
In her coffin. What do you think about the kind of makeup and the sort of special effects in this film? Because I think they are some of the best we've seen.
I think they're very influential. I think we can see their appearance in later zombies. I think we can definitely see that. It's a work of Roy Ashton again. We haven't spoken about him for a while.
No.
And and again, in that sort of typical Roy Ashton / Hammer way, we're thinking, must be using sort of all sorts of Tom Savini type effects and all the rest of it. No, it's 1966. He had crumpled up bits of tissue paper, a little bit of latex, and very creepy contact lenses. And that's what he had, basically, just put a little bit of paint on there to make them look a bit dead, a little bit unwell. And they are extraordinary. They look so amazing. particularly during a sequence, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I'm sure we are. But yeah, there's that wonderful sort of lap dissolve sequence that you were talking about, where we see Alice starting to sort of change before our very eyes. And just in case we miss the point, there's a wonderful moment where Sir James is staring at her. He goes, "Zombie!"
Yeah.
And I've actually sort of got a sample of that. I'm going to use that as my ringtone on my phone. I don't have many friends that call me on my phone, but I'm going to make damn sure they do from now on as a regular thing. Call me, because I just want to hear Andre Morel go, "Zombie!"
It's so good. It's such an amazing moment.
Terrific, really good. But they are wonderfully sort of realised monsters, aren't they? They're really scary. I've often said this about horror films. I don't have to be scared by them. This one doesn't scare me in the same way as perhaps The Exorcist does, which is kind of almost like an existential dread kind of thing, I find. But it unnerves me to a degree that not many Hammer films even do. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
The Hammer films will often, I find, really exciting and really sort of like, wow, these are great, these are wonderful. This one I find very, very unsettling.
Yeah.
And again, it's very difficult to put finger on why. Perhaps it is just because the zombies look so extraordinary.
Yeah, and the performance, I can't stop thinking about Shaun of the Dead when you think about anybody trying to perform as a zombie. The little sort of drama lesson that they get about being slack jaws and slack arms and all of that. But they're good in this as well. And we touched on it earlier about kind of the way that they move in unison, and there's a real kind of melancholy to them in some ways when you see them all down in the mine, being whipped. Because I know you said earlier that Hamilton is almost a cult of one, but of course he's actually got all of the bastard fox hunters.
He's got his minions,
sort of down. The main guy. What's his name? Denver, played by Alexa Davion.
Oh yeah.
And all of the other guys are all sort of down there, they're basically the slave drivers, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
I think Denver is kind of Hamilton's sort of second when it comes to doing the actual rituals, and the rest of them are just basically wielding whips and making sure that all of the slave zombies are doing what they should be doing.
He's not going to give them any power in any of this. They're still as subservient as the zombies are in a way.
Yeah, but there's a way that the zombies move, because they're not in a position really to be threatening in those moments. They are just workers. They're just slaves, and there's something in the way that they move in those moments that I found quite sad as well as sort of unsettling.
They're quite pathetic, and I mean that in the sort of the literal sense of the word.
The literal sense,
the pathos of, you actually feel sorry for them because they didn't ask for this. This isn't, they become monsters, but they don't have any of the power of a monster. They're not sexy like Dracula is. They're not obsessed like Frankenstein is.
Yeah,
they're just slaves. And they're just, they're people who've had their lives snatched away from them, only to then be reborn into slavery. I mean, God, it's horrible. What an awful existence.
And I love, you've made the point a couple of times, Kev, and you're so right about Plague of the Zombies really sitting in the middle of these sort of two arms of the zombie subgenre, of those voodoo enslaved kind of slave master, zombie master type films like White Zombie and I Walk with a Zombie, and then the sort of marauding hordes, much more threatening monsters that we get later. And it really bridges those two eras so perfectly.
It is the film that sort of holds them together in a lot of ways. It's kind of, like I said right at the start, I said it's kind of looking back to those voodoo influenced ones, but it's also laying the foundation for a lot of what was to come.
Yeah.
The look of the zombies.
Yeah.
That's all over Lucio Fulci's films. And it's just the sort of the political subtext to it is pure Romero.
Yeah.
So, it is a really interesting place in the history of the zombie film.
Yeah, I love it. Right, well, we should probably stop start talking about what happens in this film so that we can finally get to the point that you can talk about your favourite bit from the entire movie.
Well, I've got several, but I know one of them's going to be yours as well, so I just know that.
Right, it is. So Hamilton has obviously overstretched himself. He has snatched Sylvia away, and obviously Peter and Sir James are hot on the heels of it. So James goes up to sort of confront Hamilton and takes the opportunity to have a look through all of the sort of papers, and he finds, evidence that he's, been doing these sort of Haitian rituals. He finds all the little dolls in a secret drawer.
Yes.
Always love a secret drawer. He presses a little button and it pops out from the desk. It's brilliant. Peter's supposed to have been keeping an eye on Sylvia because Sir James is very concerned about her, having clocked that she's got this cut on her finger. And Peter turns his back for about 30 seconds because he's being a bit wet, and obviously she sneaks out. And Sylvia arrives at the mine, and she is met by zombie Tom Martinus, because he has now also become a zombie like his brother.
Yep.
So they're gathering everybody up, and he's one of the ones, I think, when you mentioned, Kev, about earlier, you can because you've seen these people before when they weren't zombies, you can kind of pick them out.
That's right.
But again, there's this sadness to they've just lost all of their personality, right? He's just another one of the horde now.
Indeed.
And so as we sort of barrel towards the end of the film, we've got these two things kind of going on concurrently, because you've got Sir James up at the house while Hamilton and the zombies and Sylvia are down at the mine. And luckily, even though he's a bit slow, he did figure out where she was going. So Peter has followed her there. I thought that these two things sort of working in tandem, really, like, the tension was great.
Oh, yeah. And you get that sort of final release of the fire, don't you? Which, of course, is the cleansing fire that we come to expect from a Hammer film, which... it kind of wraps things up a little bit too conveniently, but what else are you going to do with a horde of zombies, with a plague of zombies,
It is, it is convenient, and, again, everyone get your bingo cards out because, it's a Hammer film ending in a fire.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really loved is fire breaks out at the house that Sir James is in, and you think or I certainly thought, I was like, I'm not sure he's getting out of this. Like, it is a fierce fire, and he cannot get out of this room. And the butler that we mentioned earlier, who's played by Lewis Mahoney, by the way, he finally sort of manages to get the door open, and he comes in to sort of investigate. And Sir James sort of grabs him and says, we have to get out of here. And then as they manage to escape unharmed, the voodoo dolls are burning in the fire at the house.
That's right, yes.
And then the zombies in the mine start to smoke.
That's right, yeah.
And then light on fire. And I thought that was a really, quite a sort of, I don't know, audacious use of this idea of, if you stick a pin in a voodoo doll, it hurts the person whose, sort of avatar it is.
Yeah.
And so here we get them bursting into flames in the fire at the house. And this is actually the undoing down at the mine, because all of the zombies burst into flames. I thought it was great.
That's right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is so clever, because I was wondering, how are they going to get this fire into the mines?
Yeah.
And I thought, is there going to be some secret passageway, and it's going to go down the passageway and burn its way into the mine? But that was such a clever and economic way to do it. You're absolutely spot on right. Yeah,
it's great.
I like that.
And Peter manages to get Sylvia off of the altar. She's just about to be, whatever Hamilton's trying to do to her. And Peter gets there in the nick of time, snatches her out from harm's way, just as the zombies are all bursting into flames and starting to maraud. And as their voodoo dolls are destroyed, they also seem to start to come back into their own sort of consciousness, because they then turn on Squire Hamilton and all of the other nasty fox hunt men, and so you get that lovely kind of satisfying catharsis of the sort of zombies, the enslaved people, kind of rising up against their oppressors.
Well, yeah, and that's the sort of the whole thing, isn't it? That these are the working class now rising up against the... This is a very Marxist film when you look at it. This would not play well in certain parts of modern society, but when you look at it in those terms, it is actually quite a Marxist film, isn't it? That the workforce rises up and throws off the shackles of the hated oppressors. I mean, OK, they die in the process, but that's a horror film, so we need to have that happen. But it is, isn't it? It's kind of interesting that's the way they frame it in a way.
Yeah. So it's not, it's not like zombie films where you have to shoot them in the head or decapitate them or whatever. I really like that, actually. Although it must be a horrendous thing to go through to come back to your consciousness when you're on fire and you're a zombie.
Yes.
It's I don't know, as an audience member, I was very satisfied. I was like, yeah, fucking get them,
I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely right.
And so James sort of comes again just in the nick of time. So Peter and Sylvia are trying to, you sort of think like, how are they going to get back up? And he comes down in the lift down to the mine, and sort of gathers them both in. And this lovely moment when they sort of pull the grill across the elevator, and Hamilton comes up and he's like screaming for them to let him in, just as the fire and the zombies kind of consume him, and they're like, no, you're not bloody hitching a lift with us, actually. You can stay down here and burn.
It's no more or less than you deserve, you arsehole, so you stay here. Yeah, love it. I mean, we shouldn't gloat in the death of others, even when they're horrible people, but with him, oh yeah, let that bastard burn and be eaten, or whatever. Maybe they are going to eat him. Maybe that's the birth of the whole sort of zombie flesh eater thing. Maybe they're going to consume him literally at the end. We don't know.
Oh, yeah.
There's no evidence that they are, but we could retcon that into some sort of fan fiction, can't we? They eat him, and that starts the zombie apocalypse. But
yeah, well, I mean, I assume that this is where the ghouls from Night of the Living Dead appear 2 years later, right?
Indeed, yes. Well, yeah, just like 2 years and sort of like 100 years in film time. But
very good point. Very good point.
It takes a long time for a shuffling zombie to get from Cornwall to Pittsburgh, so.
Yeah.
It could take 100 years.
The Atlantic's a really big sea.
It is. Yeah, I mean, they can walk along the bottom of the sea, but boy, it's going to take them a while to get there, isn't it?
And we don't just get the fire as well. We get an enormous explosion.
Oh, yeah.
With this and... what were we watching a couple of weeks ago that had a massive explosion at the end? Oh, Frankenstein. Evil of Frankenstein?
Yes, that's right, yes. Yeah.
Hammer are getting into the pyrotechnics. I'm into it.
Well, when you consider that these 4 films were made back to back to keep the costs down, as well as much as to sort of pack them into double bills and all the rest of it, it's amazing that they had the money to do that. Really,
yeah, because it's a good one. It really goes up the mine.
Yeah, and like I say, this was the B film.
Yeah,
this wasn't the A feature. This was the support film, but they put some money into it. It looks good.
It does. Yeah, it's amazing. And again, just coming back to what we were saying earlier, of this one's just kind of got everything really. So, including those sort of big, quite grand special effects that sort of, for the climax. Right, come on,
what
Kev.
Are we doing?
Let's do favourite moments, and I'm going to let you go first so that you can tell everybody, so that you can tell everybody about the scariest bit in this film and one of the biggest scares in Hammer horror history.
The scariest moment for me is when it's John who has come back. He's been brought back as a zombie, and Sylvia has been attacked at the house, and if I remember right, she's wandering home, and she passes the mine head. And as she does so, there's the zombie John cradling the body of Alice, cackling loudly, and just throws Alice over like a sort of a small cliff into a pit. And oh my God, that is such a shock.
It is such a shock.
We've only just got over the fact that, sort of poor Sylvia has been mistreated by these incredibly awful men. And she's wandering home, so we're thinking, that's the release. Okay, she's going home. And then suddenly this thing happens. This white-eyed, cackling zombie comes out of nowhere and throws a body to the ground, which we then realise is Alice.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, bloody hell, well played, Hammer. It's John Gilling, isn't it, directed this one? And, well played, that man. That is a superbly mounted sequence.
It is incredible. It's genuinely shocking.
It is. There's no build-up to it at all. We don't expect that zombie to be there.
No, it's a jump scare. It's a full-on jump scare.
And he's brilliantly done. That was one of the first things I saw from this film. And that was like, you see that, you think, I need to see the rest of that film. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing I saw first was the other scary bit in the film, the nightmare sequence. Oh, yes, it's when Peter has passed out, having seen Alice being turned into a zombie. He passes out, and we don't know that we're in a dream straight away.
No, because it's beautifully sort of transitioned. It's seamless, isn't it?
Yeah, there's none of that wibbly wobbly camera work and the harp playing and all the rest of it to go into. This is a dream, folks. He just wakes up, and yes, you said earlier the camera gets a bit more handheld. But that doesn't come in straight away.
No, it doesn't.
When it first happens, we're not sure what the hell's going on. And we see Alice approaching Peter as a zombie, smiling at him, smiling quite lasciviously at him, weirdly looking more alive than she did when she was alive.
Yeah.
She's more full of certainly sexual energy when she's dead. She's got designs on her husband at that point, and we know they're not flesh eaters at this point, so what the hell designs has she got? Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, all right, okay, good luck with that, Peter. Yeah, okay. And then, of course, we get Sir James beheads her with a shovel.
Yeah, brilliant. And if anybody knows anything about me, I love a decapitation, so I was loving it. And of course, it turns out to be a nightmare sequence. It's one of the few that Hammer really did. They didn't really go many to the film Nightmare had a few of them in, but they weren't big on dream sequences as much as people are today, I think, in horror films. Don't seem to be able to watch a horror film these days without a dream sequence in it for a jump scare. But this was really well done. This is really... And again, John Gilling, wow, man, he knew how to make an atmospheric sequence, didn't he? Yeah, big
it's
time.
Really creepy, really scary, really creepy.
And again, it's giving you so much of that... sort of delicious classic zombie moment that again at this point in the subgenre wasn't really a thing, but what is so recognisable to us now, which is the hands coming up,
the hands
from the grave, creeping over the tops of gravestones, and then a group of zombies all kind of advancing on a victim as we see them from their POV. Like, it's all there. I mean, this is what I would say about this influencing later zombie films. The visual grammar is being rewritten here, and it would continue to be used for many years to come after this. I've got a couple of other ones I want to just very quickly mention, if I may. Michael Ripper, he mentions that the villagers believe that what's going on in the village is down to marsh fever. And I wonder if that was a tip of the hat to Captain Clegg. The Marsh Phantoms. I love that. I didn't catch that he said that. I reckon it's got to be, isn't it?
Got to be, surely, because that was Michael Ripper's other big role. That he, arguably his best one for Hammer. Made some people cry, I seem to remember. Some girlies that can't cope with this thing cried, I seem to recall.
I can't imagine who would be affected by such things in such ways.
It was me, wasn't it? It was me. So I like that, and finally, just a little bit of an acting masterclass from Andre Morel. We were talking about how great he is. He has this fantastically satisfied look on his face when he orders the odious Denver to go and fetch Hamilton for him when he goes to the house, and he just tells him, fetch your master for me, or something like that, and he just turns around to camera. He's got this slight smile on his face, like, yeah, that'll teach you, you jumped up little twerp. But you come round here trying to throw your weight around here. I am a sir, you know. And it is wonderful. It's a beautiful little bit of business from Andre Morel.
Yeah, amazing.
What about you? What are your favourite bits?
We've spoken about most of them already, so obviously the jump scare, absolutely.
Yeah.
Obviously the nightmare sequence. And we've spoken about Alice kind of becoming a zombie and those effects.
Yeah.
The only other one that I've got in my notes that I don't think we've mentioned is there's a beautiful shot when Alice first goes up to the mine. So she's sort of gone out in the middle of the night. You know, she's obviously being drawn up there by Hamilton and his voodoo. There's this incredible shot which is a bit sort of Nosferatu,
right,
where just this shadowy hand comes up over her face.
Yes.
And then it turns into the full silhouette of a man, and I think she screams. I would imagine, in my memory, she does a big hammer scream.
Yes, yeah.
But saying that, when we were talking before about Dracula, Prince of Darkness, I said in my memory that he never opens his mouth, and we came to see how much nonsense that was, didn't we?
Well, didn't we just? Yes, we both got it in the neck a little bit with that episode, didn't we?
But that beautiful, like, they don't need to do that. They don't need to put a beautiful shadowy hand across her face.
No.
Her look of absolute abject terror. And I saw that again, you know, rewatching it, and I was like, yeah, it's good, this.
they do it because it serves the atmosphere of the piece. It's just because it's one extra little bit of creepiness that they can lob at us, and I am so glad they did. It's a good call. That's an excellent shot. I love it. Love it.
How about commercially? So this one went out with Prince of Darkness, is that right?
That's right, yeah, it did. And obviously that did well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the allure of having Christopher Lee back in the role of Dracula, it put bums on seats, worked well. And so this was the film that it went out with, and yeah, it was. And over the years, it's one of those films that when I first started getting into Hammer films, people would say, Plague of the Zombies, one of the best. It's not one of those that sort of had a second life, as it were, that's grown in reputation. The reputation was there right from the start. By the looks of it, people recognised that this was something very special indeed.
Yeah.
And I think, like I say, I think the B movies actually sort of carry these double bills, not entirely, but I think they do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah. All right, well, let's not beat about the bush. We've already said that this is, you know, been in our tops and our favourites for ages. I'm just going to put this immediately into Elite, because I think that this is just... I think it's pretty much a perfect film. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. I put Elite and 2 exclamation marks because it deserves 2 exclamation marks. It is. It's like I said earlier, it could well be the perfect Hammer film. There are a couple of films I like more than this, but that's just a personal preference thing. But I think as horror films go, this is one of the best horror films of all time, certainly of the 1960s. And I will die on that hill. You can come at me on social media all you like. I think this one is one of the greatest horror films ever made.
Well, and just to loop it back to what we were saying at the beginning when we were talking about zombie films in general, when you have got a subgenre that is quite oversaturated, and a lot of them, not all of them, because I like a lot of zombie films and there are some incredible ones. But I would say that it is a subgenre. Again, going back to Mike's season about zombie films. So often I think the kind of commentary from guests and from people who wrote in was, zombies they're good, but they're not my favourite, right?
Right.
Because I think that it is slightly bogged down by the reputation of anyone can make one. The oversaturation means that it's actually maybe a little easier to find a not great one than it is to find a great one.
Absolutely right.
And how nice is it to be doing our lovely podcast and look at the zombie and go, well, it's literally one of the greatest zombie films ever made.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you slept on this film because you thought, oh, not another bloody zombie film, do yourself a favour and go watch it, because it's not just another bloody zombie film.
Exactly that.
Which is
exactly that.
Something very, very special indeed.
Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. We'll be back next week as we travel to Russia for Rasputin, the Mad Monk from 1966, which you can find on VOD and is, again, part of the Hammer box set that we keep going on about. To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout the podcast, head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us questions or comments for upcoming mailbag episodes. Drop us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com. You can follow the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram at EOH_network and on BlueSky at Evolution of Horror. You can follow me on Instagram and BlueSky at Bunny Darke, and on Letterboxd I'm Bunny Darke. And Kev, where can people find you online?
You can find me as EOFFTV, Encyclopedia of Fantastic Film and Television. What a pretentious title that was. On BlueSky, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd. You can find my website, eofftv.com. And if you search for EOFFTV Review, you'll find my review site where I've reviewed loads and loads of films, including Plague of the Zombies.
Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for another episode of Hammer Time.